everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOCReader, and welcome back to my channel. 2025 was not my best reading year. It's probably my worst reading year that I've had in a while. In general, it was an up and down year for me. I started off the year with no job, then I got a temp job, which I did not like, and I was kind of sneaking in reading when I could during the temp job. And then I was doing a lot of audiobooking. It was harder for me to pay attention to physical books because it just takes more energy. And then in the middle of the year, for like about 2 months-ish, I had no job, was on the job hunt, got another job, and thankfully that job has stuck. But then that was a whole adjustment, finding my reading schedule. I have a commute that's like 15 minutes going and 20 minutes coming back. So I've been getting a lot of audiobook listening done during that time. Instead of music on the radio or like on a playlist, I just will listen to my books. And so a huge chunk of my reading, more than any other year, was audiobooks. It is a lot harder for me to get into physical books with my busy schedule. And when I pick up a physical book, I want to keep turning the pages. And like I said, I just found that very difficult last year to want to pick up these books and keep turning the pages. So I ended up actually like reading a lot of books that were just okay. I feel like 2025 was the year of okay reads. They weren't particularly standout, but they weren't awful. They were right down the middle. And I feel like I had less new authors than previous years. A lot of these authors were authors that I had read before, and there's so many books in. And I know it's harder to keep the ideas fresh and coming, especially if you have like a book that you're dropping every year, maybe 2 books you're dropping in a year, like a lot of the authors that I read were. And I feel like a lot of people are very comfortable right now with their editor, where they're just turning in what their editor wants to read, but the imagination is not there, the excitement is not there. So a lot of books ended up just being so-so. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do a best books of 2025 just because there weren't a lot of standout ones to me compared to previous years. But I definitely wanted to come on here and share my worst, because my worst were bad. These Toxic Things by Rachel Hall. I want to say this was my first like worst book of the year, like just outright terrible. I buddy read this with a friend back in February, right before I started work again. So I had like some free time and I'm like, I want to read these books. And it took me a lot longer than anticipated to read this one because I had a hard time getting into it. And the main character here is insufferable. Her name is Mickey. And I find for me with Rachel Hall books, now that I've read a couple of things by her, and I've looked back on my notes, I have the same issue with every book that I pick up from her. You have these female main characters who are just truly insufferable. They are more concerned with lusting over whatever man is in their proximity than anything else of importance going on in the story, which for a thriller is not great. Mickey has spent so much time lusting after this white man who was like her boss or somebody she worked with or something like that. It was ridiculous. Like, she got on my nerves. The audacity of her to barge up into this man's house and try to demand things from him that, like, and they weren't even a couple. It was weird. Mickey was spoiled. She is in her early to mid 20s, I think. Parents have a fancy guest house that they let her have all to herself. She drives a fancy car. She still goes over every morning and has her mom make her breakfast. But there's some secrets that they've been keeping. The book actually, I will say, the first chapter started out interesting, but then nothing connected after that. Like, even when we found out who the killer was that was going around, nothing made sense. It actually contradicted stuff from that first chapter, which was crazy to me. Basically, Mickey works a cushy job where she makes these like digital scrapbooks, which sounded interesting, but in actuality it wasn't. This lady dies, and so we should end her project, but Mickey's like, no, I'm gonna see it through because she already paid for it, even though nobody was there left asking for it. And then she uses it to get close to the lady's grandson. Oh my gosh, like, I could not. At one point in this book, there was a whole chapter just of her mom making breakfast, like step by step. It irritated me so bad. And I just feel like I was reading something from an older author who was trying to sound young, and Mickey was like giving millennial, but she's supposed to be Gen Z, and there was a disconnect there. Rachel House of Hall is just not for me. I realized that reading this book, I was confused because I feel like at the time when I bought this copy a few years back, the book was getting positive reviews. A lot of people said they liked it. And then I go online and I'm like, oh no, there's a lot of negative reviews now. And truly, this one was a hard one to get to. Me and my friend were like messaging each other back and forth the whole time, like struggling to get through it. Because I like torture, I decided that I'm just gonna read both of my Rachel House of Hall books in close proximity to each other. So I ended up reading the last one. Now, I was optimistic about this one at first, but I also knew that Rachel did not have any experience writing romance nor fantasy, and this was her first one. Interestingly enough, I found out that they read These Toxic Things and decided to commission her to write this, because I'm like, at first I thought like it was something she wrote and then submitted, but no, they commissioned her to write this without experience in either genres, which was an interesting choice to me. This was not great. You could tell it was by an author who has never written romance or fantasy before and was learning along the way. It tried so hard to be youthful, just like These Toxic Things, and it didn't hit for me. I find that a lot of these romantasy books tonally are off because it's giving medieval England, it's giving wannabe Lord of the Rings type setting, but it's all this modern slang that does not fit into like this time and space that they're in. There was a lot of modern slang. We're following a main character, I can't even remember her name, but we're following this main character who wakes up with amnesia and some girl trying to steal her clothes. So from page 1, actually, I read like the first couple of lines and I was irritated, but I'm like, let me keep going. And it's hard because you're following this character who has no clue what's going on. Amnesia is also a big thing I've discovered in Rachel House of Hall books. It's one of her go-tos. So we're getting info dump stuff at the same time as this main character. She's also the only black one in this world for reasons I don't even remember. And to be honest, I don't feel like it was as big of a deal as the book tried to make it. It ties into her being this magical being, but truth be told, a lot of this was like a journey story, but without interesting stuff happening along the way. Like, she instantly meets this guy and is lusting after him for no reason. They barely said 2 words to each other and she's lusting and has all these sexual thoughts about him constantly. And it's just forced for chapters on end. Lots of bad banter, lots of sword jokes that I'm like, are we 12-year-old boys? Like, what is going on here? The world building wasn't particularly interesting. And then, after all the sword jokes, sex happens off screen. Like, sex happens off page. I was irritated at that point because I'm like, all that build up and then like it was like blink and you missed it. You would have missed like where they said they had sex off page. After I did all that suffering, that happened. And again, the world building wasn't interesting. Randomly, like, these characters would be thrown around, and it's like, why? So, needless to say, the last one and I did not have a good time. I have realized that Rachel's writing is just not for me, and I won't be picking up any of her books going forward. This is Not a Ghost Story by A. Marie. This was one I really hoped would be great, and then it wasn't. And the publisher sent me like 3 copies of this book. So that was like extra disappointing. I thought I was going to get this really cool literary story about this black man who was a ghost that came back to life, and he instantly becomes a celebrity, and he has to navigate this world and all these demands of him. And that's what we were promised. That's not what we were given. Instead, it was a story about this white passing biracial and her woes. She was hired to be his girlfriend for publicity reasons because this man was gay, and you can't be black and gay and back from the dead, obviously. And he got pushed aside in his own story for this girl's tragic mulatto woes. And that irritated me. Like, I don't find that her story was particularly interesting. The glimpses that we got of his were interesting. It does all tie together towards the end, but at that point I just didn't care. I also didn't hear a lot of people talk about this one after it released, so I figured a lot of people kind of felt the same way, that they were a little bit bamboozled here. Blood Moon by Brittany S. Lewis. And there's been a lot of talk about this book the past couple of days. I just want to say what people are saying is true. This is Twilight fanfic, and I never even read Twilight. I never watched the movies, but I know enough about it to know that this was Twilight fanfic. Too much of the backstory was the same. The characters were too similar. There was too many lines directly pulled from Twilight, too many scenes directly pulled from Twilight. There's dropping Easter eggs and paying homage, and then just blatant copying, and a lot of people are getting mad when we're saying it, because they're like, well, she said she was inspired. Again, there's inspiration and there's copying. She definitely copied way too much of Twilight, and then inserted a lot of stuff from the originals, which she said she had watched them like back to back and was like reminiscing about her teen years and blah blah blah. And she failed to come up with a truly original story. I won't be going to read the second book, but hopefully for the people who will, like, she inserts more original ideas, because it didn't even get remotely interesting towards the end, until towards the end of the book, and by that point it was unearned, just because we had suffered through nothing. Even the things that made Twilight and the Vampire Diaries a guilty pleasures were not present. The romance was awful. You have one clear winner of the love triangle. It's like fated mates and everything, and then you have this boy at the side who keeps disappearing off page for pages on end. And neither side was done really well. We get this one side character constantly on page saying fucking love triangle, and I'm like, why are we being so fourth wall-y for no reason at all? This wasn't even really a love triangle, because there was no equal romance between the two. So overall, this one like more irritated me. I'm like, if this is what it was like reading Twilight, I am glad I never read past a few pages, because as a teen, I didn't like Twilight. I was hoping this was going to do something different, because I do like some paranormal romance work, but you have to like be able to poke fun at yourself. You have to be able to do something a little bit different, and this was just regurgitated more of the same, just with a diversity checklist. Because even though we have a character I'm supposed to believe is Latinx, I don't know, because it never said what I actually never said he was Latinx or Latin or Hispanic or anything on page. It never said the country of origins of his family either. Nothing was cultural here. We have these characters who are in the Midwest and are supposed to be non-white, but they're going through this PWI like white people. Their race in no way, shape, or form affects how they move through the setting, which was a letdown. History Lessons by Zoe B. Walbrook. This is one that I was seeing some of my mutuals enjoy, and I wanted to enjoy it. People are calling it a cozy mystery. It's really not a cozy mystery. Just because there are some lighthearted moments does not make it a cozy mystery. Just because it has an illustrated cover does not make it a cozy mystery. And there was definitely tonally things that clearly made it not a cozy from the jump. Like, people were like, oh, it's a cozy mystery with more death. No. In cozy mysteries, generally they don't talk about sexual things on page. They don't, and like when I talk about sexual things, I'm talking about like sexual assault and stuff. They don't talk about sexual harassment on page. They don't talk about, like, they don't have like bloody details on page, and this book had some of that. It was weird because on one hand it was trying to be this book where you have like these girlfriends and they're not that serious and they work as professors, and I feel like the academic stuff she got right, like about the hardships of being a professor, but she also tried to do this romance that really didn't add up because it was with this white man, but the entire book we're talking about the privilege of white men and how they get put on this pedestal, but then you have her go and put this random white man who is woke on a pedestal. It didn't even make any sense. Like, she starts lusting after this former detective turned bookshop owner, and he reads the black classics and this and that. Also, very weird for a book to have a whole storyline condemning a professor for sleeping with his students, but at the same time you are quoting bell hooks on page. She also slept with a student and admitted it, and then was like, oh no, he said I didn't take advantage of him. Ma'am? So I'm like, if we're gonna have the discussion, like, we need to also talk double standards. We need to talk about how it's not okay from either gender to be sleeping around like with students. Like, you have this this professor, basically she gets pulled into this mystery because this other professor who was well loved on campus was stalking her. It really didn't add up and make any sense, and like I said, tonally the book was all over the place with the serious conversations it was trying to have while also being very vapid to try and be funny at the same time. This did not work for me at all, and the only reason why I finished it was because I was listening to it on the way home from work every day. The Baby Dragon Cafe. Now, I knew I had no business reading this one. I fell for the Baby Dragon propaganda. I thought the cover was cute. There was a lot of stuff recently coming out with baby dragons. I had seen it in the stores, like the big box stores. I had seen people talking about it. I'm like, you know, these aren't usually my types of books, but I had just read one that was more cozy that I'm like, it wasn't too bad, and I do like to try new authors of color, so I decided to give this one a chance. And at first it was okay. I was like, oh, you know, this is kind of cute. We're following this woman who is running a baby dragon cafe, but that's all there was to this book, the idea of following this woman who runs a baby dragon cafe. There was a really bad romance shoehorned in between her and this man who was having trouble taming his baby dragon. I don't even understand his anxiety over being a dragon rider. I truly don't understand what the problem was. At one point there was this marriage of convenience, fake marriage plot thrown in, and I did not understand the reason why. Then there was like this classism issue that was kind of thrown in, and then also the book wanted to talk about race a little bit, but not particularly well. Overall, the Baby Dragon Cafe didn't really have a plot. I understand y'all want cozy, y'all want vibes, but I'm like, since when did we stop having plots in books? Low stakes does not mean plotless wonder. you have to be working towards some kind of end goal. Like, where was the goal they were working towards? Where was the clear-cut villain? I feel like a lot of fantasy books now, they're just meandering with no real purpose. Like, what are we working towards? So those were my worst books of 2025. Let me know if you've read any of them or if any of them are on your TBR and you're still going to read them. If you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!